Hello, I'm Marilia. Welcome. This is Salto del Gato, where I leap into raw data and rumors involving crime. I look at the facts, but I also review the rumors and the conspiracies that spring up around the crimes. Hey, before we get going any further, I want to share with you that content creators here on YouTube have to structure their conversations to appeal to computer code known as algorithms. You know what those are, don't you? It's computer code written by humans instructing machines to identify certain keywords and data. To avoid having a channel shut down, there are certain words that cannot be said on YouTube. I know, it sucks. And it's not necessarily cursey words they look for. It's any words considered to be triggering. This is to protect the YouTube platform owners from losing any ad revenue. I don't know why that would apply to all YouTube channels, as many of us are not monetized, but it does. YouTubers talk in a sort of bizarre, cryptic way. It's because of the algorithms. Many of the words that describe criminal acts in true crime are targeted as triggering. So there you have it. That's my spiel. Now let's get to the channel. This channel discusses raw data and rumors associated with crime and conspiracies. If you are triggered by events associated with violent crime, then you shouldn't be on true crime channels. I do my best to refrain from being too graphic, but sometimes the graphic nature of the crimes are the story. You have been warned. Now let's get into it. Oh, but first, if you haven't done so already, like, subscribe, and at the end of this video, consider leaving a comment. Thank you. Now, let's go there. Let's get into the raw data. This is the Idaho 4 event that's now referred to as the King Road residence. For clarity, I will call this video the Bryan Kohberger case. I will also put a disclaimer here that Bryan Kohberger, although he has been arrested and indicted for 3 counts of first-degree homicides and 1 count of grand theft. However, he is innocent until proven guilty. The information in this raw data section is exactly that. It is data that comes directly from court documents that have been released and that I have read. Whenever I include statements that I am not extracting directly from the court documents, I will state that it is either alleged or that it is speculated, which means those statements have not been included in official court documents. The crime took place on November 13th of 2022 between the hours of 4:05 a.m. and 4:20 a.m. Now, I have done a few videos on this crime, and in one of them I thought I had set the scene pretty well for what type of an evening this was, but I'll try to do that again here. So this was a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving. And it was really cold. It was like 30 degrees, and the temperature was dropping significantly. So it was really cold. It was the last weekend before winter break, and so there was a lot of excitement going on. This particular weekend began on November 11th of 2022, which was a Friday. That's typically wild party night for the students in the University of Idaho. But the following day, which was November 12th, 2022, that was game night. So partying is toned down some because all of the students are involved in probably attending the game, and this was a home game. So, there was a lot of school spirit in town. And then later, there's all kinds of sorority events. So the students were all socializing, and so the partying was toned down a bit. The next day, which was a Sunday, was November 13th of 2022. So pretty much that would have been a sleep in, get things done, get over your hangovers and whatnot, and prepare to get back to school on Monday. Now, as I said, this was approaching the Thanksgiving holiday. So this was probably the last weekend before kids started returning home for the holidays. And it also coincided with the upcoming winter break. And at that time, a lot of students would probably not be returning until graduation, and some of them were graduating early. So there's a lot of students who this was pretty much their last college weekend. This particular weekend, on top of the home game events, it was a busy time in town because there was also a Veterans Association convention that was taking place in town, and also, of all things, a lumberjack convention. So there was more people than usual this weekend. It was busy, it was cold, and students were being students. They were sort of, hanging out one last time before the big break. This particular group of friends, there was one of them that was going to be graduating early. That was Kaylee, and the rest of them were going to continue their studies. One of them, Kaylee, had already moved out of the house, but she had returned this weekend just to show her friends the new car she'd bought. So there was a lot of stuff happening, and she wasn't supposed to be there, and Ethan Chapin didn't live in the house. He just happened to spend the night that night. So really, there was only going to be Maddie, Xana, Dylan, and Bethany, who you would have expected to be home. But that wasn't the case. There was 2 additional people, and Murphy, the dog. But we'll get into all that. This crime took place on Sunday morning, November 13th of 2022, between the hours of 4:05 a.m. and 4:20 a.m. So, according to the surviving roommates, Dylan and Bethany, all the roommates and the overnight guests were back in the house by 2 a.m., and everyone was in their respective bedrooms by 4 a.m. on this early Sunday morning of November 13th, 2022. There was a DoorDash food delivery for Santa at 4 a.m., and her phone was open to the TikTok app at 4:12 a.m. It is alleged that she was on TikTok at that time, and this would be the last proof of life for Xana. Now, here's my speculation, and I would speculate that Ethan and her were attacked within minutes of that time frame. It is speculated that the 2 roommates on the 3rd floor were stricken first, and that would be Kaylee and Maddie. By all accounts, this would put the perpetrator entering the house at approximately 4:05 to 4:06 a.m. and exiting the house by 4:18 or 4:19 a.m. And this is known because a white sedan, referred to as Suspect Vehicle 1, was caught on video cam leaving the area of the house at a very high rate of speed at 4:20 a.m. Now, this places the perp in the house for a duration of 15 minutes or less, and in that short time frame, he extinguished the lives of 4 people in a very violent, cruel, frenzied attack. The location of the crime was a multi-leveled fraternity house located at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. The house had an unusual floor plan. It had a main front entrance at the first floor facing the parking lot where the residents park their vehicles. There are 2 bedrooms located on this first level and a flight of stairs to the second floor. Bethany's bedroom is located on this first level. On the second level, there was an additional 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. There was a kitchen and living area and additional stairs leading to the 3rd floor. Dylan had a bedroom on the 2nd floor, and Xana had another bedroom on the 2nd floor across from each other. Ethan was with Santa in her bedroom on this night. On the 3rd level, there are 2 additional bedrooms and a bathroom. Kaylee and Maddie were in Maddie's bedroom, and Murphy, the dog, was located in Kaylee's bedroom. Now, there was also an entrance into the house from the back porch area, directly accessing the 2nd level kitchen. The back of the house faced a wooded area with a steep incline onto a road. The affidavit states that the perpetrator entered and exited the house through the 2nd floor sliding glass door entrance located at the kitchen. Now, this is purely speculative, but I added this here because the unusual layout of this house would lead one to believe that the perpetrator was familiar with the house floor plan, either by previously visiting the house or having been able to access real estate floor plans available online for this property. The perp may also have known in advance the locations of where certain individuals' bedrooms were in the house. The house was shared by 5 female roommates: Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, Dylan, known as DM, and Bethany, known as BF. One of the roommates, Kaylee, owned a dog named Murphy, who was also in the house on this evening. On the night of this unfortunate incident, Santa's boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, was an overnight guest, as I have already mentioned. By 4:20 a.m. on November 13th, 2022, the crime was over and the perp speeds away. His car is caught on video cam at exactly 4:20 a.m. 2 individuals in the house are left unharmed, as is the dog, Murphy. 911 was not called until 11:58 a.m. November 13th of 2022. That would be almost 8 hours after the crime occurred. I will address rumors and conspiracies when I get to that section about the 911 call. I'm not going to go into the entire backstory of who the 4 victims were because their stories are available on a plethora of YouTube crime channels and on various social media outlets and documentaries. Additionally, some families have formed foundations and are in the process of having children's books published about their child. I also speculate that there are family members who may not want to have their child's life consistently linked to the perpetrator or the suspected perpetrator or to this crime at all. All of this information is available online, and I'm sure that it's well known who they were and what stage of their lives they were at. I'm not going to repeat those details here, except to say that these were normal college students doing what college students do, working their way through the university, and they were at various levels of that journey. Kaylee was due to graduate early. She had technically already moved out of the house and completed all of her coursework for her degree. She was visiting this weekend to show off her new car to her friends, as I stated earlier. Ethan didn't live in the house. He was just spending the night with his girlfriend, Santa, who he had been dating for a matter of months. Theirs wasn't a long-term relationship yet, not to say that it wouldn't have been, but I don't think that this was a love of their life affair for either one of these 2 individuals. They were very young, in their 20s, and in my opinion, probably just exploring how to be a boyfriend or a girlfriend or even be in a relationship. I think they were in a college romance that had just gotten started. Where it would have led, no one will ever know now. Maddie was also approaching graduation, and then she had plans to move back to her hometown in Idaho and continue her life with her boyfriend to see where that would lead. Dylan and Bethany were also very new to the house and were beginning their university journey. Dylan was the newest member of the house. She had recently moved in. This was part of a weekend that was extremely busy for the university. November 11th of 2022 was Friday night, and that, like I said, was considered to be wild party night. The next day was game night, and sorority events were taking place, so it was more toned down. And then Sunday was probably just get over your hangovers and chill, get ready for school on Monday. On Sunday, when everyone eventually woke up to the news, it was horrifying. 4 young students' lives had been lost in the early hours of that Sunday morning. There are many questions about this case, and the most prominent one is, why on earth did it take so long to call 911? It took almost 8 hours. And as we move through this case, you'll see that it also took an additional 4 hours after the 911 call was placed and the first police arrived to secure the scene for the forensics team to even begin processing the scene. So it wasn't until 12 hours later that the police began to process the scene. As the days pass, the public and the media become extremely frustrated, as do the family of the victims, because of the silence coming from the police department. Finally, on November 29th, a bolo is released for a white sedan. That's a be on the lookout. In my opinion, the police felt stressed to release something that would keep the public's confidence in them going. And that did seem to do just that. It seemed to assuage everyone. We have some news. It gave everyone hope. But then silence continued from the police department and frustrations resurfaced. Some family members hire an attorney to act as a liaison between the family and the police just to see if they could get some answers. And family members are going on the media and venting their frustrations. On December 13th, police hold a media presser to respond to inquiries from the public, and they assure the public the investigation is not cold. It didn't convince a lot of people, but nonetheless, on December 15th, there are 2 traffic stops for Kohberger in Colorado and Indiana. Kohberger was traveling cross-country with his father, returning to Pennsylvania, allegedly for the holidays. En route, unbeknownst to anyone, the police was already following him. And there were 2 traffic stops, one in Colorado and one in Indiana. Eventually, the body cam footage from those 2 stops became public, and we got a really close look at a bewildered-looking Bryan Kohberger and his poor, innocent father. October 27th, police recover trash from the Kohberger house in Pennsylvania and are able to make a match through familiar DNA to a DNA sample they retrieved from the knife sheath at the crime scene. Now, the press and the public are not aware that any of this is taking place. They're still stewing in their frustration with the police, who are not sharing any information with them. However, on December 30th, in the wee hours of the morning, there is an FBI raid at the Kohberger residence in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and Kohberger is arrested. He is wearing shorts, a T-shirt, and he is in the kitchen wearing plastic gloves on his hands, allegedly cleaning some things up. January 4th, Kohberger is extradited back to Idaho. January 5th, the Pennsylvania court releases the arrest warrant. January 12th, Kohberger has a status hearing in Idaho. A date for a preliminary hearing is set for June 26th of 2023. But then a secret grand jury convenes and indicts Kohberger on May 17th, 2022, and charges him with 4 counts of homicide and 1 grand theft. On May 22nd of 2022, he was arraigned on 4 charges of first-degree homicides and 1 grand theft charge. And this is where he stood silent, forcing the judge, whose name is Judge, so he is Judge, to enter a plea on his behalf. Judge enters a non-guilty plea on Kohberger's behalf, and Kohberger's trial is scheduled to begin on October 2nd of 2023. Then all of a sudden, there are these document dumps that begin to take place. And we see a whole series of motions filed on May 31st of 2023, where the prosecution is asking to seal any records retrieved from several companies. There's AT&T, there's Google, there's Snapchat, there's TikTok, and there is a company called Strava. And everybody was going kind of berserk, wondering who Strava was, and we're going to talk about that company and what it was that they were looking for. But then following that, an investigative grand jury convenes and subpoenas the Kohberger parents to appear before them. And they do. They objected, and the mother specifically didn't want to, but they were forced to, and they did. We don't know what the results of that are. That hasn't been released. What we do know is that it was regarding a case of a woman who went missing about a year ago and whose body was just recently recovered. This person's name is Dana Smithers, and she lived in the same county that Kohberger lived, and he was in town during the time frame that she went missing. That's the only raw data link that I can find. Now, his mother says that, he didn't do it. And her sister says that he has an ironclad alibi, but the ironclad alibi is his mother, who says he didn't do it because he was home with me on that night and he went to sleep before I did, so I know he was sleeping. However, we have since found out that Mr. Kohberger is a night bird. He likes to go out at night. He's moving around at night. And so how does she know that he fell asleep? What if he just went to his room and didn't fall asleep? Or what if he did fall asleep and then woke up and did something? So we don't know. But there doesn't seem to be any connection between the Dana Smithers case and Kohberger, but we'll wait and see. Now we're going to review the affidavit. So let's go there. So this affidavit is released. It's dated May 31st, and it's asking the court to seal the search warrant to major social media and communication companies. Like I said, it was AT&T, Reddit, TikTok, Snapchat, Google, and Stravia, among others, for the victims by the prosecution. But the Stravia app caused a lot of chatter because a lot of people were not familiar with it, and it turns out to be an exercise tracking app that monitors your length of time you exercise and how well you perform, and you can even map your trail that you run or walk or bike. And it turns out Mr. Kohberger is a runner, and he runs pretty darn well. He runs a 6-minute mile. That seems incredible to me because I can't run that much, but he can run 1 mile in 6 minutes, and that means he's in pretty good shape. He's agile, he's strong, he's athletic. And that was an important thing to know, because whoever committed these crimes has to be all of those things: fast, agile, strong, and athletic. So he was training. And here's the other catch to it. You know what time he was out there running? At midnight. He's a night person. He moves around at night. We'll know more. We're going to learn more about that in a minute. Now, you know that running a mile in 6 minutes may not be much to anybody, but for me, I can't even walk a mile in 6 minutes. I don't know. I think that's very fast. And in this track, it shows that towards the end of his hour and a half of exercise, he became faster and stronger. Not exhausted and tired. Didn't slow down. He got faster. That's interesting. He's stronger than he appears. He's a night person, and all of his movements show that he is up at night moving around when the rest of us are sleeping. The affidavit that was released on December 29th of 2022 contains information used to obtain the arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger in Pennsylvania. It is 19 pages, and the important thing to know about this document is that what it does is it tracks what the police was discovering and doing, how they were investigating this case, and what they found. And some of the techniques they used, some of them we learned about in the Murdaugh trials, at least I did. But some of the techniques that they use involve this thing called video canvassing, where they actually go out into the neighborhood and into the community for residences and businesses and retrieve all the video that they have. And I think they have a way of being able to detect where the cameras are. So they retrieve all that information. I guess they subpoena it and they get it. And they retrieved tons of information this way. Well, it took, I think, they had 15 agents dedicated to just combing through all that video footage. And what they were looking for was to see if they could identify either an actual perpetrator or a car that didn't belong to that residence that was accessing that house or that area within the time frame of the crime. Another thing that they used was a thing that's called trap and track. And what that does is that it goes out there and it pulls a registry filled with all of the data and geomapping from the cell phone. That's the part I remember from the Murdaugh trials. And that's a very extensive data dump, and they have to sort through all that. And what they are able to do with that is track all of the movements of the phone. Now, they pulled all of this information from a time frame going back to June 27th, I believe it was, of 2023, all the way, it might have even been the beginning of June, but from June of 2023 all the way to December 30th of 2023, they pulled all that phone information up. And they went through it. They took a deep dive through all that information. So rather than me go, point by point on that affidavit is available online, and you can just Google it and pull it up if you're interested in reading it. It does go pretty much point by point of what happened, who the detectives were that were there, and this is what I pulled out of it. So what did they retrieve from all that information they synthesized? Well, here's what they found. So it turns out that, as we have already established, Mr. Kohberger is a bit of a night person. And so he's up and moving around at night when everybody else is sleeping. They did not do a chronological list of all of the exact times his phone pinged, but they did mention a couple of occasions. So they focused in on a time frame of, I believe it's August 26 of 2022. He was stopped very close to the area of the 1122 King Road residence, and it was late at night, and he stopped on a traffic stop. And what this does is that there is police body cam footage of the officer approaching his car, asking him for his identification, registration, and insurance. And you see his face. And so he identifies himself as Bryan Kohberger, and she verifies that on his driver's license. And then she verifies that that car is his, and he tells her that he just moved from Pennsylvania, and he hasn't yet changed the registration on the car to Washington, and that he lives in Pullman and attends school over there. And he's having this conversation with her, and he seems as polite as he could be, but very interested in the details of the law. And although he is very non-aggressive, he's actually very, in a sense to me anyway, it sounded passive-aggressive as he was trying to find information from her about what he did wrong. And so she says she would have to go pull the exact statute, and he asked her if she wouldn't mind doing that, and she does, and explains to him why she stopped him. But what we get from there, and what the police gets from there, is that we are able to connect him with the ownership of this car. And she doesn't wind up giving him a ticket, and it's just a warning, and it's all friendly and whatever. But we find out that he doesn't have a front license plate because his car is registered in Pennsylvania, not in Washington, and that his intention is to get it registered. And that's important because on another video footage, his car is spotted various times. And the car is seen on video cam as it passes, and it's identified as the same car because it doesn't have a front license plate. The state of Washington and Idaho require both front and back license plates on vehicles. And his was still registered to Pennsylvania, so he didn't have one. That became an identifier This is the car, and it's this guy. It's his car. Now, at the same time that he is being picked up on video footage in certain areas, the other tap and track register is showing that his phone is connecting to towers that provide services for the areas that he's traveling in. And what that means is that now they can connect that his phone number is with him or with that car when it is being picked up on video cam. So they can place the phone and the car together at the same locations. And of course, since he was identified in that traffic stop, they know who he is, or who probably is the person who's driving this car. The other thing we find out from that affidavit is that he had been picked up, his phone had pinged 12 different times in the vicinity of the 1122 King Road residence. Now, those are the ones specifically, they didn't identify what dates those took place in, but they did identify that all but one of those took place late at night or way early in the morning. Interesting. So that sort of makes you think that he was stalking them. Now, because I want to make sure that I don't miss anything, the other thing that we find out, which is a little troubling to me, is the amount of time that it took the FBI, the state police, forensic team, and the Moscow police forensic investigations to begin. They had been there since they were caught at 11:58. We just assumed they were there within 15 minutes, so by 12:15 there was a police presence there, and they identify what they were doing as securing the crime scene. But they'd been there for 4 hours before the forensic processing team came, and we have heard from the coroner that she didn't get there till 4:30 or 5, or if she got there at the same time that the forensic team got there, she had to wait for them to process the scene before she could access the bodies. So those bodies were there for about 12 hours. It was very cold. I don't know if they left the heat running in the house, so I don't know if that affects anything. The other thing that the report does is that it identifies, describes when the police walked in there and where they found the bodies. And obviously we know that they found Xana and Ethan in her bedroom. She was on the floor. They don't exactly say what position he was in, just that they also notice a male. And then they describe their wounds a little differently. They say that she had apparent wounds that looked like they came from a weapon with an edged weapon. And then they describe his, referring to the autopsy reports, and they describe his as sharp forced wounds. So I don't know why a difference in the description. I don't know if there was a difference to the actual wounds, or if the police officers just didn't want to be redundant and they wanted, just to, for clarity's purpose, just to distinguish between the two. When they go upstairs, then we find out that the reason they know, by the time these detectives, the forensic processing team, get upstairs, the dog is not on site anymore. The dog has been removed. But from body cam footage from the responding officers, they could see that there was a dog in there. So at this point, the dog is not there. I don't know if they took him to the kennel or where they took him. We also don't know where Dylan, or Bethany are. There's no mention of them. We know that they were questioned by 3 different police agencies: the Idaho Moscow Police Department, the State Police Department, and the FBI. extensively. We also know that they interviewed Jack Decor, Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, because they make a statement there that he was able to verify that the dog belonged to him and Kaylee, which was substantiated by the Dylan's and Bethany's testimonies. So I don't know that there's anything to read into the fact that it took the police that long to get there. Maybe that's standard practice, and I don't know, but I just think that 12 hours is a long time for 4 bodies to just be right where they were found. The next thing that was interesting in the report is that they never make mention of anybody else who was present. And we know that there was somebody who placed the call to 911. That person is never identified. We do know that the call was placed by somebody other than the surviving roommates, and that the phone that was used was not the roommates' phones, or it was a phone that was already in the house. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it was the roommate's phone or if it was one of the victims' phones, but they placed that call. They don't mention who, if anybody else was there. I know that it has been leaked in the Grizz, gossip, rumor, and innuendo streams, that Ethan's brother was the person who was called, I don't know by whom, and that was who made the phone call, which would have been horrific, that he's the one who discovers his brother and has to call 911. There's also something that I don't understand. Now, none of this is mentioned in the affidavit, but there is something else, that these were a fraternity house, so that's all Greek life, and that there is, I guess, a system where if something happens in a Greek house, that the residents are supposed to first defer to contacting the Greek house people in charge of that and report it to them, and then they're the ones who contact the police. I don't know any of that. That's not mentioned in the affidavit. That's just what I hear. So that, if that is true, may explain why the part of that 8 hours that it took so long to contact 911. Because if the roommate was panicked, and then after she came out of her panic, she contacted the Greek house, it would kind of answer some of the questions about, well, there were calls placed to other people or whatever. And I don't know who the people are in charge of the Greek sorority houses in Greek life. Is it other sorority members, maybe more senior sorority members, which would mean that they're students too? I don't know. All of that. But Ethan and Xana were found in Xana's bedroom. She was on the floor. We're not sure where Ethan was. And then they found Maddie and Kaylee in Maddie's bedroom, both of them on a single bed, and I believe that's a twin-size bed. And then they said that if you were standing at their doorway at the entrance to the bedroom, on the right side, I guess that's where Maddie was at, there was a knife sheath that they found. That's where they found the knife sheath, and it was laying next to her. Here in the Maddie and Kaylee situation, when they describe the bodies, Detective Payne describes them as stabbing wounds. So there's a difference. He describes each set of wounds differently. And I don't know that there's any meaning to that. Now, the interesting bit of news came early on when we found out that Dylan said that she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor, but she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m., and she thought she heard Kaylee playing with the dog upstairs on the third floor. And a short time later, Dylan said that she heard what she thought was Kaylee saying something to the effect of, "There's someone here." A review of the records of Xana's phone showed that this could have been Xana that she heard, because of the fact that her phone shows she was on TikTok at 4:12 a.m. Now, I speculate that she could have just had the phone open to that app, but I believe the perpetrator wreaked havoc on her and Ethan shortly after that. It's the last proof of life that we have for her, so everything stops then for her. Now, DM stated that she looked out of her bedroom but did not see anything when she heard the comment about someone being in the house. Then she also states that she opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying coming from Santa's room. And then she said that she heard a male voice say something to the effect of, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Isn't that creepy? At approximately 4:17 a.m., a security camera located about 50 feet away from this house picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper, followed by a loud thud, and a dog can also be heard barking numerous times beginning at 4:17 a.m. And this camera was only 50 feet from the west wall of Xana's bedroom, and I believe that is the wall that showed blood dripping down the floorboards onto the exterior foundation of the house. DM says that she opened her door for the third time after she heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose, and this person was walking towards her. Dylan describes the person as being about 5'10" or taller. He was male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. And the man passed by her, and she stood frozen in her tracks. And then he headed out the back sliding glass doors in the kitchen. And she said she did not recognize this man. Investigators believe that this is the perpetrator and that he was leaving the house at that time. Of course, part of the investigation, besides the tap and track registry and the video canvassing, was that they retrieved all of the phones from everyone in the house and downloaded all the data. And just to be clear, so that no one is confused, all of this information that is included in this affidavit has been taking place from the moment that the crime scene was discovered through the subsequent days and weeks leading up to the arrest and arraignment of Kohberger. And of course, part of that investigation involved that DNA sample found on the knife sheath that was traced to Bryan's father. There was also a footprint that was found on the second day when the police went back and reprocessed the scene. They found a footprint that had the print that looked like diamond shapes that were connected to Van shoes because they were resembled the bottoms of a Van, the sole of a Van shoe. And it was right outside of Dylan's bedroom door. And I thought, how eerie. Could he have stood there and considered maybe going after her, or was that just a brief pause in his passage as he left? I don't know. As we can see, that when we thought that the police was doing nothing and we were so frustrated with them, they were very busy just kind of sorting through and synthesizing tons of data that they got back. There was footage on the camera that indicated a white sedan that's now referred to as suspect vehicle 1 that was traveling westbound, and it gives the time at approximately 3:26 a.m. The vehicle on that footage did not have a license plate on the front. Remember, we've already discussed that. Multiple videos obtained from the King Road neighborhood showed multiple sightings of that same vehicle, one starting at 3:29 a.m. and ending at 4:20 a.m. on the night of the murders. Wow, how convenient. Now that's the footage of the video footage of the car. The telephone pings tell a very similar story with an interesting little twist. I keep referring to that register as tap and track. It's trap and track. It's trap and track. It's a trap and track registry. The last four numbers of Kohberger's phone are 8458, and they are able through all that to match. Every time the phone pings, they see his car in the cameras. So they know the phone and the car are together, and he owns them both. So now you can see that the police are putting together all this data, and they're forming a profile that's beginning to build. That this man is Bryan Kohberger. He owns this car, and he owns that cell phone, and they're together all the time. And he's been going by this house 12 different times. On the night of the murders, I can't use that word. Now, here's, I think this is something that's very important and interesting that they were able to identify. On November 13th of 2022, they're able to track his phone movements, and it shows that he left Pullman at 3:29 a.m. He arrives back at Pullman at about 5:27 a.m. But his phone is turned off between 2:47 a.m. and 4:48 a.m., consistent with his leaving his home in Pullman, driving to the crime scene, being off during the time that the crime was being committed, leaving the crime scene, and not returning back until his phone pings again at 5:27 a.m., showing him back at his apartment. Now, here's something to consider. He has been also tracked to these different little areas in Washington called Johnson, Lewiston, and Clarkson. They're about 20 to 25 minutes away from his home in Pullman. He went somewhere after the crimes because he's not pinging back at home unless he was back at home all this time and he had the phone turned off. But video surveillance doesn't pick him up either. So what we see is that at 5:27 he's back home. Now he's back at his house. It's about 5:27 a.m. on November 13th of 2022. But at 9 a.m., the car and the phone are again spotted on video cam and are pinging as they are returning to the Moscow residence. And at 9:30, the car and the phone return to Kohberger's apartment in Pullman. So he goes back to the crime scene. I don't know if he realizes that he's left the sheath and he's going to go after it, doesn't see any police presence, and decides not to do it. Later that day, this is after the crimes, this is Sunday, at about 12:36 p.m. on November 13th of 2022, the car and the phone are caught on surveillance cameras and cell phone tower pings at Kate's Cup of Joe in Clarkson, Washington. The pings show his car then traveling from Pullman to Lewiston, Idaho at 12:46, and his phone then pings at an Albertsons grocery store in that area. And again, the car is caught on surveillance. The phone pings in the same area. And later at about 1:04 p.m., Kohberger is caught not only walking around inside the Albertsons store, but checking out at the register and leaving the store. And then they stop reporting to any network between 5:30 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. So I have questions. Where did he go? Where did he go after the crimes? Who does he know in the Johnson area? Is that where he went? I don't know. And the report doesn't give any more data about pings. I'm sure they have them, but this is pretty much what they provide. So we know that he was in the area of the crime scene and that his phone was turned off, specifically during the period of time that the crime was taking place, and a short time afterward, giving him time to maybe dispose of clothing, get rid of the weapon, clean himself up, whatever. But he went somewhere. Now, in this Johnson, Lewiston, Clarkson area, this is, like I said, about 20 to 25 minutes away from Pullman, Washington. Now, there's a national park there. Did he go to that national park out in that area? And do you know what the name of that national park is? Hell's Gate. I wonder, did he go there? They're known for their very large peaks. They have like a 8,000-foot elevation peak. Did he dump something in that area? Has that area been canvassed? I don't know the answers to any of that. So that's where we're at with the raw data. And now we're going to get into the rumors. The biggest question in everybody's mind is why 8 hours? Why did it take somebody 8 hours? That's the million-dollar question everybody is asking. And everyone stumbles on it. And we all try to understand, and we've, I think, all gone above and beyond to give the benefit of the doubt to Dylan, but it's hard to understand how, in the light of the events that she reports took place, strange sounds, the dog barking, loud enough that she got up 3 different times. So my question would be, what would I do if I was in that situation? And we're all different. I get that. She could have had a very severe PTSD response and frozen. For 8 hours, I question that. But wouldn't you have called your friends? Couldn't you have called other roommates? And if they didn't answer and you heard that strange behavior, I would keep calling. And if no one answered, I would be alarmed, thinking, certainly something is going on here, because even in their drunkest stupor that they could be in, constant calling would wake somebody up eventually. And even annoyed, they would answer the phone, "What do you want?" But that wasn't done. Everybody went back to sleep. So the only thing that would explain her frozen shock syndrome would be that she had that, and a severe PTSD response. Or she was in a drug-induced stupor that knocked her out and she slept through the whole thing. So what are the rumors out there? Well, the rumors are that she was on a drug called ecstasy and that she passed out. Allegedly, that came from friends of hers who knew her and spoke with her after this incident, and she allegedly said that to them. Remember, this is all alleged. Now, in the rumor section, none of this is connected to any raw data facts. Now, on that note, allegedly, this was known to be not just a party house, but the party house, and the house to go to obtain substances. So let's explore that. If you go through all of the Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok postings of these group of people, in no instance is anyone captured in the background consuming any type of substance. The only thing that you ever see, even on the police cams or anything, is all of these people listening to very loud, obnoxious music, dancing, partying, consuming large quantities of alcohol, usually in the form of beer. At least that's from my perspective, what I see. So based on all of that, my assumptions would be these people aren't into hardcore lifestyles. I would say they probably had exploratory, light, or maybe recreational involvement in these types of substances, but I didn't get the feel that anybody there was hardcore. I try to keep in mind that one student was graduating early, pretty much had already completed all her coursework. Another one was about to graduate. The rest of them would probably be doing finals and whatnot in the spring. So they all seem to have been keeping up their university courseworks. And I'm not sure how you would do that if you were into an extreme lifestyle. So I'm not sure I agree with the rumors and conspiracy theories that this house was one of those dens and that at least one of the victims was the go-to person to obtain those things from. The next theory there is that an individual named Emma Bailey, and there's been a couple of rumors and allegations made about her. She lives in a very nice home that belongs, I am assuming, to her parents, about 3 minutes away from this house. It might be her house, I don't know. She's a resident of Moscow, Idaho, and I'm not sure if she ever went to university. I don't know if she was a student. I don't know much about her. What I do know is that she is caught on a police video cam being arrested for a DUI with other people in the car, and all of them look like they're blasted out. They're out of it, completely out of it. And they had all come from some of the nearby nightlife in the area. Now, after that video comes out, another video comes out, again from police body cam, who have responded to the noise violation issues coming from the King Roadhouse resident, where the police had to go and tell all the kids to bring down the noise. And when they arrived, there's a lot of kids in this house, and this party has spilled out into the back a yard area where the second level entrance to the kitchen is located, and they are loud and proud, dancing, music is blaring. You can see beer cans and people stumbling about and pretty much being pretty high. Just ignoring the fact that the cops are there, it takes the cops a long time to get someone to respond to them. All of them. So someone eventually comes out and they tell the police that the owners of the house aren't there, and when the police threatens to take everybody into custody for trespassing violation, then they come up with an owner of the house, and it's one of the girls. And in one of those cases, one of the victims is apparently under the influence of at least heavy doses of alcohol, trying to negotiate with the cops. In another instance, it's another one of the victims, the one that was about to graduate, and she seemed like she was totally in control. But in that video footage, you can see this individual, Emma Bailey, in the background. It's blurry, but what you see about her is that she's wearing the same hairstyle and headband and bracelets on the same arm as she was wearing in the body cam footage when she was being arrested for the DUI. It definitely looks like her. I can't be 100% sure, but it looks like her. So it's alleged that this girl orbited the party scene at the King Road house. But here's where it gets a little bit telling. This girl was not only arrested for that DUI a few weeks earlier, but she was arrested recently with her boyfriend, who is a young black man named Demetrius Robinson, known as D, and they were arrested for providing a substance, the same one that Corey Richens used to get rid of her husband, to someone who had to be taken to the hospital because they were unresponsive and subsequently they didn't make it. It's a little confusing. I think were released from the hospital, and then something else happened, and they didn't make it. And Emma Bailey and her boyfriend D were arrested because they were the ones who allegedly provided this substance that caused the person not to make it. So the rumor mill then says, aha, see, it's because her boyfriend and her were known to be distributors of substances. Okay, let that dog lie, because I don't know if it's going to bite. And I'm going to move on to the next rumor. This one says that one of the victims of the crime, somehow or another, once in a panic response to a police call to the house during one of those parties, she flushed a large quantity of substances belonging to that couple I was just talking about, Ms. Bailey and D. So, of course, they say Mr. D became furious because that put him in a financial problem where he had to pay his sources for all the lost product. And so the events that occurred on November 13th, 2022 at the King Road residence were a form of retaliation of sorts. Now, mind you, there's no raw data to connect any of this. That's pure rumor. Keep that in mind. Let's move on to another one of these dogs that don't bite. One of these victims had a parent who had a high-risk lifestyle and a history of bad behavior. And, of course, there's all these attempts at placing a shadow over her and somehow or another trying to make a connection with the parent's lifestyle and the victim's position in the residence as a go-to person for party substances. Again, no raw data connections. Then there is this really outlandish conspiracy theory that involves a cartel and retaliations for disobedience or for loss. And this one weaves through a pizza parlor, its owner, two of its employees that were also victims in this case, and a man known as Deed, same guy that was Emma's boyfriend, who was the substance provider. The rumor mill alleges that his source was through a franchise connected to the pizza parlor owners. Speculations are that this little section between Pullman and Moscow is a haven for these cartel types of businesses, and that area is saturated with substances. God, the creativity of the rumor mill. Another name that frequently comes up is Emma as the DoorDash driver, and that she was the one who delivered the food to Santa on that night. But the police have spoken to the delivery person. They have not disclosed if it was a man or a female, so I don't know if there's any raw data that connects Emma to the DoorDash driver that night. But that is another connection. And then there is a man named Bryan Kohberger. Now, Mr. Kohberger lived with roommates, I believe, on the top level of an apartment complex not far from where Bryan Kohberger lived in Pullman, Washington. And he was a trained military operative and sharpshooter who had been discharged on a medical discharge. Now, he suffered from PTSD. Must be an epidemic over there. And on December 15th of 2022, a call came into 911 that there was an incident of a man in possession of an AR-15 who was restraining his roommates. And so the police responds. Indeed, they find such a person doing what he was alleged that he was doing, and there is a showdown between him and the police, and Mr. Kohberger is taken down. Now, the rumor mill seems to connect Kohberger with Kohberger. They said they kept each other's company. Now, unless I missed something, and that could very well be the case, other than the fact that both of their surnames begin with the letter K, I can't find any raw data to make a connection between those two. But Grizz does. You know Grizz, right? Gossip, rumor, innuendo streams. Well, the only connection that I was able to find was on that cross-country road trip back to Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, where Bryan was driving with his father, allegedly for the holidays. Remember, they stopped them twice. In one of the stops, Bryan's father mentions the event. He doesn't name Kohberger, but he refers to the incident. He refers to the incident, and you can see Bryan Kohberger goes wide-eyed, freaking out, bewildered look in his eyes, like if he could tell his father to shut up, he probably would have. And his father, just innocent, he says, "Yeah, man, you should have seen what happened. We just come in from over there. We're just going home for the holidays." Meanwhile, police already have Kohberger under surveillance. And the funny thing is the police think they have this stuff all tightly wound up, and yet this stuff is leaking out to the press, who's grabbing that video and putting it out. There seems to be a prevailing theory that a lot of people find it hard to believe that one person could have committed this crime. This could not have possibly been one person, and that it had to be more than one person, and that it had to be someone who is highly trained to do this kind of work professionally, such as a military operative, and Kohberger fits the profile. But he's no longer with us. Another rumor that seems to not go away is one involving a Washington State University mom who claims that her daughter had like a 6-degree separation from someone who claims there was a Snapchat or text buzz going on amongst the students way before the cops were ever informed of the crime that took place at the house. Now, again, I mentioned this in my raw data section, that it could be that if this was Greek life, and if there was some kind of ruse for a fraternity house in Greek life, that maybe there was a chain of command in the way that these kinds of things had to be reported, and maybe it had to go to somebody in charge of the Greek property, and then it fell on them to contact the police and yada yada. So I don't know about all that. But that dog keeps going for walks in the streams of the Grizz. Finally, the last rumor is one that if you visit the obituary for Bryan Kohberger, there is a section where you can leave a message, and most people, make a comment and they leave their thoughts and prayers and whatnot. But there are 2 entries that are interesting, and YouTubers have honed in on them. And to be fair to them, they themselves say they're not sure if this isn't a troll who did that. But there is an entry from Emma Bailey that says, "I'm going to miss you, my friend. I'm going to miss delivering your favorite food to you." So there's that connection again to her being the delivery driver. That could be a troll. And then further down, there's another entry that says Bryan, spelled Bryan, and then just the initial K. Could be that somebody didn't know how to spell his name, so it could be a trope. And this one says, "Rip, my dear friend." The initials RIP, rest in peace. That one was entered on February 23rd. So who knows? Is there any raw data to that? I don't know. I'll let you be the judge of that. Again, folks, nothing in the rumors and conspiracy section mentioned in this video have any raw data that I can connect to it. So they are pure grizz, gossip, rumor, innuendo streams. Thank you for visiting the channel and spending a few minutes of your time with me. I always appreciate you. I hope you enjoy the content, and I hope you return. Bye now.